Hi, I am Jessica Ahmed and I bring to you a video series by HashCash Consultants. We will talk about the various use cases and implementations of blockchain, which is so much more than just Bitcoin. It's everywhere you look around. It is in automobile manufacture, space exploration, medical research. Today we will talk to David, who is the CEO of EncrypGen, and he will talk about how blockchain is changing the way scientists are researching genetics and its implications. Stick around and find out more. So, David, the thing is, it is not very often we see people who have been academics become an entrepreneur. So, can you tell us what motivated you to cross the line?
Sure. So previously I'd written a book on genomics and patents. That book was called Who Owns You, and that came out in 2009. And I got lucky because shortly after that book came out, the U.S. Supreme Court, ACLU brought a case that eventually went to the Supreme Court, but the time between the filing of the case and the decision by the court was about 4 years. So between 2009 and 2003, I argued and argued and argued that genes shouldn't be patented, and meanwhile, parallel, a case was working its way through the courts, and eventually the Supreme Court agreed with my position on it and the position of others who had argued for that. In this case, where I wanted to create something that would increase people's ownership of their own genes and provide them a way to get paid for the use of that data in research, I didn't want to wait 4 years. And the academic process is unfortunately this slow, meandering process, and it doesn't always work out. The policy is affected by academic work. As I said, I got lucky before. So this time I decided I'll just build something, I'll create a technical solution. And that's why I started the company.
Okay, so for people who don't know about genetics much, can you explain what genome testing is and how is it relevant to medicine?
Sure. So right now, most people who are getting genomic testing are doing what I would call cosmetic or recreational testing. So the companies, the direct-to-consumer testing companies like 23andMe or Ancestry are testing, for some of your genetic code, not much, about 600,000 single nucleotide polymorphisms in your genes. You have 3 billion base pairs in your genome, though, so that's a very small amount of the data that's getting collected by these tests. And that data is correlated with certain things you can know, like your ancestry and risks for certain health conditions, etc. But the correlations are not terribly strong, and it's not really very medically useful yet. But perhaps over time, as we gather more data, it will become more medically useful. So we're really in a very early stage of genomic science, and the name of the game now is to gather more data, get more data, and correlate it with more medical knowledge. And that's where genetic testing is going, and there are more companies coming along that will offer exome or whole genome testing and get more data. But really, we've got to gather it all together, and we've got to start to do more big science with it and figure out what it all means. So for right now, your ability to get tested for any medical conditions is limited but growing. And we want to improve that by creating new sources of data and more opportunities for research.
Okay. So what could possibly go wrong, say, if it is not adequately protected or kept private, all this data?
Yeah, so we've discovered that with even anonymized data that is available on large databases online, like the 1000 Genome Project, it's possible to re-identify people using other data that's out there, like knowing where the data comes from geographically, knowing a little something about the individual. And genetic data can reveal something about you that you may not want others to know. In criminal cases, for instance, public genealogy databases have helped find criminals based upon their relation to people who posted their data online. But things about yourself, like the presence of certain disease genes or traits that might be associated with genes you have, are things you may wish to keep private. So it's important that you maintain control of that data, that the data is properly de-identified, and that any identifiable information about yourself is kept separate from any genomic data that goes out there for research.
Okay. And so, like, when did you discover the possibility to confluence DLT with genetic studies?
Yeah, I had been interested in blockchains and as a hobbyist and as a philosopher, so I'd written a little bit about them while I was still a philosophy professor. And I realized that blockchains are good at a couple of things. One is tracking transactions. They're a permanent record of transactions. And they are also, cryptographically secure and distributed so that they're difficult to hack. As I was thinking about issues relating to privacy in genes, and my, interest as a hobbyist and as a philosopher in blockchains was growing, I felt this was a possible way to solve some of our concerns about ownership and privacy for genomic data by combining blockchain technology with genomic research.
Okay, so also then, how far has this actually helped blockchain and genetics together? Did you see any result in the medical field yet?
Not yet. So we're a very early stage. We just released our product 2 weeks ago. So the opportunity for researchers to start searching for data is just beginning. And we're the first to be able to offer that. So we'll have to see whether there's a market for it and how it grows as a force in genomic science, as well as in empowering individuals. But the fact that there are maybe a dozen other companies that have come along since we were founded trying to do similar things indicates that there's a strong perceived desire for this sort of service and for using blockchains in genomic research. So we're hopeful.
So when it comes to EncrypGen, right? EncrypGen, that's how you say it.
Yes.
Okay, so what is the benefit of becoming a part of the platform?
Well, you get to take control of your data. So let's say you've already done a genomic or genetic test with some direct-to-consumer company, and you want to use it for science, but you'd like to get paid for it. There's really no alternative out there that allows that right now. So if you've done 23andMe or Ancestry or even some of the new upcoming blockchain companies, none of them that are available right now allow you to get paid now for the use of your data in science. And if you have that data, there's no cost to you in uploading it to our platform and filling out a profile and allowing it to be searched and used for science, and you may even make some money.
So like when we are talking about blockchain, we generally think of cryptocurrency. So do you have a native asset as well?
We have a cryptocurrency. Our cryptocurrency is called DNA. So we got very lucky to get that name before anyone else did, and you can buy and sell it in various exchanges around the world, and you can exchange it for other cryptocurrencies and then use it however you wish.
So all of this sounds very promising, but what are the roadblocks one can expect before blockchain reaches its full potential in the medical field, or when it comes to studies in genetics and storing and sharing of data?
Yeah, well, the biggest roadblocks are regulatory. So one of the things that came up over the summer of 2017 as we were building our platform was the GDPR in Europe, which significantly reduces the availability of blockchain for data storage, really, because under the GDPR rules, you need to be able to delete your personal information. Now, blockchains are not meant to deal with deleting. They're meant to store permanently, immutably. So that's a real limitation, and that's a new one that I think is posing a hindrance to many of these health record-related blockchain projects. and is going to limit the scope of their availability. Now, we are storing data off-chain, personally identifiable data off-chain, so that we can still have it deleted, but that did significantly change the way the blockchain can be used in the product. Other regulatory uncertainties have to do with cryptocurrencies, and until there's some sort of general consensus about the status of those cryptocurrencies and their availability to individuals to use, that's going to pose another hurdle for adoption.
What can you tell us about Healthcare Global? That's something you're involved in again.
Yeah, Blockchain and Healthcare Global is a not-for-profit organization I helped found. It is a IEEE organization. We are involved in creating standards and helping to bridge the various evolving mechanisms in blockchain and healthcare so that we can help to ensure a world of interoperability and improve the chances of wide-scale adoption.
So here's this layman thing, okay, when it comes to genetics and studies in genetics, well, we generally think of X-Men. So in the last decade, how far would you say studies in genetics has come, and how far will technological innovations take it in future?
We're still very much at the ground floor. Our knowledge of the genome, human genome and other genomes, is still very nascent. The ability to identify certain genetic disease traits and to cure them is, of course, the holy grail for medicine. But our ability to do that in a way that's safe and repeatable is still a long way off. Now, recently we heard that a gentleman in China had used CRISPR to try to engineer twins there to be more resistant to HIV. My initial, I was a bioethicist before, I still am, I suppose. But my initial response to that is one of extreme skepticism, not just that they achieve this, but that it will in any way be successful. You need to have many more tests. You need to have many more trials on animals before you can do that sort of experiment on humans. And it turns out that CRISPR editing, there seems to be some resistance in our natural genetic makeup to CRISPR editing, so that eventually cells revert to their previous state. So we don't know much about it, and fears of genetically engineering humans really should be restricted to the ethics of human subject tests when we know so very little.
So if we take ethics away from the questions, the main thing I want to know is how long before we can bend metal with our mind?
I'm going to say never, but I'm sorry to disappoint you. However, there will be some really interesting things we'll be able to do eventually. For me, I think as we become like a spacefaring race, as we start to go out into space, our human fallibilities, for instance, resistance to radiation, are real liabilities. And that's where we might be able to improve things. I'm talking in the 100 to 200 year time frame to make ourselves more resistant to diseases and frailties that we face as we start to challenge new environments. But that's a long-term thing.
Well, David, thanks for joining us. So that was David, the CEO of EncrypGen, talking about how blockchain is changing research in genetics. Join me, Jessica Emmett, in the next installment of the video series as we explore how blockchain is changing other industries as well. Links will be provided to the other videos. Until then, don't forget to check out our website to find out more about our contribution to the blockchain world and our products and services as well.